Welcome to Gnostic Media's podcast, UnSpun, episode number 111. Hopefully everything is working today and everyone can hear both Holly and I. Holly's here with me in the mountains in California. We're with Mark. Unfortunately, Robert couldn't make it, and so missed out on that opportunity. Welcome, Holly. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
And good to have you back, Mark.
Thanks for having me on.
And so, we wanted to get in and finish the episode that we were doing last time, which is part 2 on Kabbalistic Inversion, the fallacy of inversion, helping people understand what inversion is specifically. So, it's a pretty deep, vast topic. We tried to fit it into 2 hours last time, and it was a little bit too much. So, first of all, we should probably, just recap what is the definition of inversion. So, you want to start with inversion?
Me?
Right.
Okay. So, we've got a definition here. Where is this from? Is this just from the dictionary?
It was I probably grabbed it from the OED. It's just a definition.
Okay, so it's basically a reversal of position, order, form, or relationship, or a normal word order. So wordplay, the placement of a verb before a subject, and the process or result of changing or reversing relative positions of the notes of a musical interval or chord or phrase. So it's both in linguistics, music, art, film. Everywhere you look, there's inversion.
Antinomianism. So, let's see. We have Webster's definition of inversion: to change the order, and this is Webster's 1828. So that the last becomes first and first last. Turning or change of the natural order of things, and that's key, the natural order. It is just the inversion of an act of Parliament. Your lordship first signed it, and then it was passed among the lords and commons, and then 2, change of places so that each takes the place of the other. A turning backwards, a contrary rule of operation, which is key. Problems in geometry and arithmetic are often proved by inversion as division by multiplication and multiplication by division. And then in grammar, a change of the natural order of words. Of all vices, impurity is one of the most detestable. Instead of impurity is one of the most detestable of all vices. And then, so that's kind of just a recap on what we were discussing last time. So, and those of you who didn't catch part 1, you'll probably want to do so because there's a lot covered in that. So what we're going to do is try to hit all of the key things in part, for part 2 here. You want to jump in, Mark?
Yeah, just a clarification. When we talk about inversion, it's not just a lie. It is a form of a lie, but a lie could be something where I just totally misdirect you in a different direction. Inversion is actually taking the truth and then just flipping it. So don't get it confused with a lie. And the reason why our topics went so long is it is probably, to my assessment, is the number one tool of the powerful group that's running the show and the mind control operation, with television. Right. Media, etc. So it's a flipping or a reversal. It's not just a lie of misleading.
So, and one thing that we should point out, though, it does fall, in most instances, it is a type of informal fallacy. So, of course, there's probably over 200 different types. There's like 50 listed in the brain database. But Kabbalistic inversion is listed in there. And it is it does fall under a specific. It is a lie itself, a type of fallacy, but it's a very specific type of lie. Like somebody asked last time, okay, so it's like a fancy way of saying the person is lying. No, it's a specific type of lie or a specific type of fallacy. So you have ad hominem attacks, poisoning the well, slippery slope, red herring fallacy, appeal to emotion, all of these different types of fallacies. So the fallacy of inversion is literally taking something, well, let's say if we have a pyramid, and we'll go into that more, and we're going to invert it so that, truth becomes the lie and the lie becomes truth. And we see, this is, since identifying this fallacy and seeing it used everywhere, I would say it's probably one of the most common fallacies that we see out there. So in terms of, like last week we had E. Michael Jones on and discussing logos, and then you and Robert were on the show before that, and we were discussing the inversion. And these all go together because when we discuss logos being reason, logic, truth, all of these things, the inversion is going to be the opposite of that. So it would be antinomianism. It's going to be the exact opposite of truth. They're going to flip everything to its inversion.
Yes.
Anybody else want to add to that?
Well, just the classic inversion is like war is peace, right? So you have peace, and then the antonym of that would be war. So then you flip it, and then they say stupid stuff like, well, we've got to go over there and take it to them, or they're going to take it to us. That's how we have our peace, or freedom isn't free, or, so it's really just a reversal of what natural order is and truth is, and then flipping it. It's not a misdirection or all, like Jan was saying, all the many different ways of lying. It's literally just taking your antonym, like let's get back to grammar school. It's the opposite. You say something's hot, the inverter will say, no, that is so cold. It's really, you could look on it, it's the true opposite or inversion of the word.
Well, it's like if you say, oh, that's, instead of saying that's good, someone says, oh, that's badass or something like that.
And what, in the 70s and 80s, do you remember? Dude, that's so bad.
Right.
Or if something was, really cool, we'd say it's fat. It's even sick. Sick, dude.
These are all inversions.
Yeah. Well, and who creates the fashion, who creates the terminology? It's the gatekeepers. It's the people who control education, the media, the music. So that's why all this stuff gets injected. It's not organically grown from our youth. No.
So you said war is peace. That's from Brave New World. So that's like a very in your face. If you know anything about pop culture, that's people learn about that. I think people are still supposed to read that in high school. And also, Jan, you just showed an image of inversion there. That's from Manly P. Hall, I believe, and that's where I first learned about.
I'm trying to find a place to put it so it's not covering all of us here. I'll stick it right in between us all. There we go.
Right.
And that's and that is out of Manly P. Hall's book, Secret Teachings of All Ages, and that is like a king or a wizard or whatever. I don't know. You'd have to read the description down there, which I can't see it. But it's showing the Star of David, and it's showing him as a reflection with his arms out, and there's a line across the middle there with, top and bottom. So we see the Star of David. The reflection is the inversion. So when you look at yourself in a mirror, that's actually a type of inversion, literally. So you're seeing the exact opposite of yourself.
You could say mirror, mirror on the wall. Whenever you have the reflecting pond, look at in Washington, the big reflecting pool, these inversion, what is it, reflecting on the giant phallic symbol? Is that what it's doing?
Yeah, and John Dee was one early magicians. If you look into traditional or simple magic, they always start with mirrors, and it just goes into this day. People even talk about computer screens being a mirror of sorts. So, so what are we doing? Are we using this tech for good, or are we inverting? Like, what are we doing as humans with our magic phones, the mirrors of the magic phone?
Yeah.
Indeed, inverting life. Well, even, and you and I have talked about this before, Mark, like Ethernet is an inversion of, thinking
Holy Spirit,
truth and whatnot, like an Ethernet, for those who don't know, is, like your Ethernet cables are what you run the computer network. So that's an inversion. Let's see, the inversion of the definition of words themselves and their meanings in many cases being opposites is from Trivium Think, correct? And there was somebody else that posted a good one a minute ago. Now I'm not sure where it went. Oh, Adam said satire. And the satire is like, like Pan,
Seder.
one of the Satanist symbols.
Well, wouldn't
Being
sarcasm?
sarcastic.
Yes, wouldn't sarcasm? My wife hates sarcasm because she always says, you say the opposite, but
Yeah.
you're going, oh, that was amazing. That was really good. And then you get away with basically insulting them, but you're like, what? I complimented you. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to be so sarcastic because I know it's hurtful, and it is an inversion. And the more that we realize it, it's like you said, it's different from lying, but it's also not truthful.
Right. Well, and Gino Denning taught me like 8 years ago that sarcasm is a sign of insecurity when you use it. So another good reason to not use sarcasm, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a left-hand path technique because
Right.
you just jump into Saul Linsky's rules for radicals, right? They're never going to win an intellectual debate, especially when you deal with truth. So they just ridicule and make fun and sarcasm and.
So, all right. So let's see what was next here in our chart. Oh yeah, there's more symbols of inversion here. I'll just try to put this here. See if I can get it somewhere. So. Anyway, this one's kind of more of the same symbol. It's just showing you how it's, an inversion there.
Once you get the pentagram, you got, oh, that's a good one right there.
Yeah, you can see it, correct?
Well, then you got, the OTO. That's, you're coming straight out of the Thelema, and which goes back to Kabbalistic. You have the male symbol and the female intertwined there. You have the Trinity of the triangle, which I was expressing last time. My view, when you look at the bottom, it's wider at the bottom of the triangle. And this is where the left-hand path is stuck, right? The truth is somewhere in there. I don't know. They're at the base level of soul in between your temples. That mind is so babyish because they don't know how does the trivium work? We hit something. We're like, whoa, feedback loop. And as we keep going, the errors get less and less. So now it's going closer, and as I get towards the top, the error and the deceptions, the clarity becomes there, and you get to that point of truth, and then that's the goal, right? That's the lifelong goal. But then you invert it, what we were saying, which is a big thing. So the inversion of not only using it as a male symbol or a female symbol, but if you use the Trinity of finding truth, or the trivium of finding truth, and invert it. Now, instead of trying to seek truth, they tell you what the truth is.
And you can see the trivium logo right there with truth in the middle, and they invert the process. And then what they'll do is they'll tell you that thinking who, what, where, when, why, and how doesn't matter. You make it up. Whatever you think is real. Reality doesn't exist. It's a figment of your imagination. You're not of the world is of you. They invert it again, right? Yeah. So they literally invert reality so that, this is what the left-hand path does, so that, and this is why mysticism is the tool of tyrants as well, because you can't verify anything in that sense. It's all your own experience. The same thing when you take psychedelic drugs or whatever. It's just all based on this personal thing that you can't experience in the commons, whereas truth is always available in the commons.
Yeah, it's great. It's great when you want to become a man god and universe between your, two ears and just live your own reality. It's, but if you want to interact in real reality and truth and natural law and that which has been here and will continue to be here,
let Holly jump in.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, I was going to talk about, I've done a lot of museum work in the past, and I was working at an art museum, and we used to give tours of the pieces of art, talk about the techniques, the history, the who, what, when, where, why, and how of art. And then the mode in which we were giving tours was suddenly changed, and it was all about us asking the people taking the tour how they felt about everything. And so it just became about just like the feelings, like what sort of emotions do you get out of this, or like it just totally became visceral, and they pushed anyone out who actually had art history knowledge or technique knowledge, and it just completely, I mean, people didn't want to go on tours anymore because it was just like, how does this art make you feel? You know, that's when it becomes, you know, I mean, modern art is a perfect example of inversion.
More awesome is awesomeful. That's
You
what
know,
someone says
some of my ex-students who are like would fit in the millennial category, it's so funny when I say bring in the grammar, who, what, when, where, you know, and they're like, how archaic, Mr. Warhol. I mean, that is so old. I'm like, oh yeah, that technique to find truth is an old technique. You're right, it is. And they're like, why do you stick to that? And because it's still the best way to get to truth, right?
Right. And thanks, Anthony, for donating $10 twice. Really appreciate that. And so let's get in now. You've been doing a lot more research on the Star of David. Now, we had one image in there. I'm going to put this one up on screen. I don't know if we want to talk about this one much. This purple image. Can you see that one up on the YouTube screen?
Oh, it'll probably be popping up in the next second.
There it is.
Yeah, that one I didn't put up. You know, you could still look at it and look at the six, you know, from the hexagram, the 6-pointed star. You could see that there's a triangle that's pointing up and down. They put in the different, I don't know if that's arcanas or personalities or, and then I don't know, you know, I'm not familiar with this one. Is this yours, Jan? Or
I found it online, but yeah, you know, you can see the 6 points on the outside and then inverted the 6 points on the inside.
so is the inversion of Prince a bard and of a knight a page? I'm not sure.
That's a good question. I'm not sure about Bard and Prince. I don't know.
So all of this is all from tarot as well. So and it's also Jung picked up on all these archetypes as well. So if you look at that image as well, it's kind of the lines that go between this the different archetypes and Kabbalah too. So it's the transmutation of each of these archetypes. So change, the witch brings about change. The maid creates; she becomes the mother. The knight, he can exploit, like the page. They can go forward with power. The mage or the seer is to know. The bard and the prince is the young man symbol that wants to destroy. The rogue and the thief is to steal. And then they crosshatch over each other. So this I've never seen this symbol before, but this
Pretty good.
yeah, I think this definitely ties in with, if you look at the Kabbalah tree, and if you study tarot, which Aleister Crowley was supposedly the first to connect all of the different archetypes of the tarot with the tree of Kabbalah, and he did that in the early 20th century, and that really revolutionized their evil magic ways in the 20th century.
Somebody wrote Therapist the Rapist. That's always a good one. So, and then Tamper Tantrum says the top triangle represents the number 7, the bottom triangle represents the number 8, which gives the 6.786, or Bismillah Irada, I'm not going to, in Arabic, which is why you find it often in mosaics. So thanks for that. And so let's go on now. We talked a little bit about now. This one is going to be the upside down pentagram, which Satanists use. And of course, that is an inversion of the upright pentagram, which represents the upright man. So they literally invert it. You know, and we should also point out that it's, you know, the thesis, antithesis equals synthesis. That's what a lot of, you know, such as the Hegelian dialectic or the Marxist dialectic, these polar opposites, and then they try to walk you right into the middle of it. So with social engineering and whatnot going on, they're trying to birth the new man through the center of the Star of David rather than through logos, and we'll get into that more here in a minute. What I want to do is try to jump into some of these other topics. So a good one for you, Mark, would be learning versus compulsory learning. What can you say about that?
You're trying to get me in trouble.
Oh,
Um, well, look,
Why would you want to tell the audience why you would get in trouble for that?
okay, well, I've been a public educator for 27 years.
And you homeschool your own children.
And I do homeschool my own children. And that is not a reflection of the teachers that I work with, who are absolutely amazing in my school, and the dedication and the truth that does come and is acquired in these classrooms. However, when it's compulsory, for example, up in our school district and many districts, you get this thing called a SARB process, which means after missing too many days of school, they actually have a SARB meeting, and then they could actually fine you, take you into court. It becomes almost criminal. And I just find that ludicrous, because my kids are on the mountain ski program up here. So they would leave like 40 minutes before school got out on Fridays for the ski program that's sponsored by the district. And we get SARB'd for excessive excused early leaves. So when you force someone or you compel somebody with the threat of the judge to learn what they're feeding you, that's indoctrination. So, learning is a process that you desire. When you mentioned it to Dr. Jones, can you find logos if you're not seeking it? And he said, no, really quick. And I was like, oh, thank God, because I keep saying I don't waste my time with people who don't seek truth, right?
Exactly.
But the same thing goes at school. If you have to go there at threat of your parents being arrested to learn, then is it really learning? My classroom, a lot of learning takes place because, thank goodness, synchronicity running into Yuyon and the trivium, and then walking the trivium and practicing it. We just eat, sleep, and breathe the trivium in my classroom, which is more powerful than regurgitating facts,
Yeah, and when they're, 2025, it'll all hit them what they learned in 6th grade, honk.
Well, I don't know. They're getting so good at the indoctrination, using the emotion. I mean, geez, they're now, think about this inversion. They are now using students as tools of protest, as teaching them to be social justice warriors or protesters, when it used to be like, wow, the teachers would be like, oh my gosh, the kids are going to protest. What are we going to do? That's suspendable. I mean, when I went to Damien, it's an all boys Catholic school. I got busted. I had several 5-hour detentions where I had to scrub the toilet with a toothbrush. Sorry, Damien, if you get in trouble for that. For putting Jesus posters all over the school saying Jesus could not attend Damien. Because back then heavy metal was cool and we weren't allowed to have our hair touch the collar. So we put up these Jesus posters, and I thought that would be funny because, talk about hypocrisy. So we had all these long-haired Jesus pictures. They found out, of course, the wimps squealed, but they said it was called a protest and we're not allowed to do that. And now, fast forward 2018, go and protest. We're going to give you time. You don't have to go to school even. So.
Right. Yeah. Is it a protest if it's school sponsored?
Right. Yeah. The government didn't have anything to do with the anti-gun walkouts. Wink, wink. I mean,
we
talk
used to
about
protest
inversion.
Government.
So, and then, another good one is just truth itself is constantly inverted into the lie.
Oh, yeah. And Common Core, listen, people would go, this is crazy, or these people are stupid. And I try to explain to them what the inverse of reason and rationality, right, is irrationality, or let's say chaos. They just want to create chaos. So the more ridiculous a law or stupid or nonsensical it is, we all go, what? That isn't. And then we try to go reason with our friends, and they're like, what? That makes sense to me, and it just creates more dissension and division. It works perfectly.
Right. All right. How about scientism, Holly? And versus science.
Oh, gosh.
Okay. Uh, well, I think it's what we were just talking about, the trivium, the who, what, when, where, and then, of course, later why and how. And so we have this promotion of science, which Jan and I have been discovering really started with the launch of the Enlightenment. And so in the 1600s, 1700s, the Enlightenment was meant to become the new religion of the masses. And so it becomes, I was looking on Twitter today, and it was like Time magazine, and they were talking about, how the planets look or how the planets smell and what they, and people just accept that, I'm not going to get too far into it, but, how can we start to look into this as citizens and as people, or are we just accepting whatever we're being told as dogma with science? And that can be with anything, with medicine. I mean, I've talked about allopathic medicine before, just the idea of, having the experts run science versus being the natural exploration of nature as humans.
Right, and having some expert using ad veracundium or appeal to authority tell you what to think, and hey, we put it through our peer review process, and therefore it's true. So, and never mind that you get a bunch of people who are all in on the gag, and they all peer review something, and then you have a closed loop system where you have control. For instance, for 70, 80 years they told us eat high grain and eat low fat. Well, we ended up with the sickest, most obese, most unhealthy population in the history of the world, and then, like early on when I started this show 9 years ago, I was in the hospital in Peru and almost died on my son's 3rd birthday from this nonsense. And then to cure myself, what did I do? I started eating high fat, cut all the grains, and you take that food pyramid, if I can even do a pyramid with my hands, geez. You take the food pyramid and you flip it again, and then this, instead of grains being the foundation, grains should be the smallest. If you eat it at all, and then, but a lot of these things are inversions again, so they keep inverting this stuff. Every aspect essentially has an inversion. They inverted Christianity. Christianity, we see it constantly. Like Holly and I have been investigating the Puritans and Salem and everything. This was an attack by the Purim or pseudo-Christians, and Judaism had been outlawed. And then what they did is they hid behind Christianity during its outlaw, did these things, and then blamed the Christians for it. And then after usury and things were legalized, they went back to Judaism, and Puritanism is completely gone now. We don't even see it, out there anymore.
So you were talking about, just quickly back to the food pyramid. I mean, we found out that, this is just common knowledge now, that it was like the sugar plantation companies and, major corporations who invest in and promote sugar and were the ones who are promoting the low-fat diet.
Yeah, it's slave food. I taught ancient civilizations for over a decade, and the biggest thing was the Fertile Crescent and how all the grain stores for their animals were able to be converted so it could be digested for humans through fermentation and bread. And then I'm just like going, wait a minute. So the freedom of tribes moving and more nomadic, now they could stay. They don't have to farm and pay attention to the weather. They could eat the bread. They could do all the building and slave work for the price of food and security. And then the kings and queens don't have to pay for them when they get older because they're going to die of inflammation and get weak and get diseases. So it's like, it was brilliant. And, even when you hear the truth, it takes time. I was really exploring quantum mechanics and quantum physics and science. And of course, how annoying Jan he cuts the chase and just goes, oh, that's all a bunch of crap. That's mysticism. And I'm like, no, it's science. And then when he challenged me, oh, really? I thought science was provable. I thought it's repeatable. It could be shared in the comments. And this is what happened, and it's a brilliant inversion. Science went from the pursuit of truth that could help us live in more harmony. Somebody posted, was Jesus real? Well, we'll get to that later, but Jesus would be the perfect example of living within natural law. So, but anyways, if you take that truth and living with the natural law, everybody could go, hey, it did. It made my life better. It made my life better. And now with quantum mechanics, it's like, you can't see it. And if you do see it, your will of desiring what to see affects it. And it might be different for you. So it means like truth is all relative. And I still hear that from some self-professed brilliant people. And it's insanity if you can't come to a common understanding of truth and share that experience.
And then, when people get into the argument if Jesus existed or not, or was real or not, that's irrelevant. It's logos incarnate. It's truth incarnate. And when you get that, everything else starts making sense. If you're arguing over if he was like, Caesar's, creation, or, with Josephus or some nonsense, you're missing the entire point. It's about truth incarnate and going around exposing all the lies and the bullshit. That's really the main point. And anyone who's trying to cover that up is covering it up because they don't want you to see the obviousness of, spending a few hours to read the 400 pages that explains it all. And most people who ask questions like that or say things like that, they haven't read it themselves.
Absolutely. The Kuzari, that book I just showed, was fascinating because they take truth and they deify it, right? They said the delivery of truth, if you want to affect the masses, you can't just go on a concept of truth. You got to deify it, and then you could create a priest class of who could contact them, what's needed. So that's what happens. They're like, oh, Jesus is your Christian deification of truth. No, he's just the greatest example of living in that. And people can't do that because they don't understand that technique of taking a truth, putting it on to a person to deify for the purpose of control.
So I'm going to disagree with you a tiny bit, Jan, just on a technicality here. I think it does matter that Jesus was a person because, first of all, people need to be able to see as humans, how to be a good person. And, if we're supposed to believe as Christians that Jesus died for us so that we could be forgiven. I mean, we all make mistakes. We're all sinners in that sort of way. So it's our ability to be able to be forgiven versus like predestination, or like you said, truth is relative. So therefore nothing matters. So therefore I don't need to be a good person. And I kind of fell down this rabbit hole because when I was in high school, I read, my teacher gave me the book Siddhartha, and it was about the story of,
Herman Hesse.
Right, it was a late 50s, early 60s retelling of the Buddha, the story of the Buddha. And basically it taught me, like, I needed to go into hell and go and do a bunch of terrible stuff before I could become enlightened. And I see now as an adult, like, that's a really terrible way of trying to figure out how to live your life. And if we can teach people to skip that, if you can help it, if you can help prevent that sort of doing terrible stuff instead of diving into it, like it was basically promoted with Siddhartha.
Yeah, my point really is that I think if you're arguing over whether Jesus existed or not, you're missing the whole point of the story. That's really what I'm getting at. And most people that I see who make that or try to make that argument have never read it. Obviously, there are the Satanists and the tricksters out there who spin it and want you to believe that none of the story is real. But to me, it's about the hero that you become essentially when you wake up in truth and logos and live and walk in truth. And it's the hero that we can all become through logos. And thanks, Anthony, for supporting the show again. Anybody else, please, support the show. I really appreciate it. Anthony has supported or donated 3 times tonight, and nobody else has. So good job, Anthony. So, why don't we get into, and there's so many messages going across right now, I can't keep up on them all. But feminism versus MGTOW is another good inversion. You know, first the CIA, well, even going back all the way back to Anne Hutchinson, from going way back into Puritan days in the 1600s, she leaves and creates Rhode Island, and she's basically the first feminist or, you know, suffragette, etc. And then, you know, Gloria Steinem and the CIA promoting, you know, all of that nonsense. And of course, we've exposed that Gloria Steinem was CIA, you know, dozens of times on the show. If anybody wants to see that, they can pull it up in the brain database. Let's see. So Gloria Steinem, and then the quote is right there. I might quote Miss Gloria Steinem, one of those so assisted who commented that the CIA wanted to do what we wanted to do, present a healthy, diverse view of the United States, and I never felt I was being dictated to at all. And that's the former head of the CIA, William Colby, quoting Gloria Steinem, one of the many, many CIA agents and assets that led the phony counterculture throughout the, you know, well, even into the present, we still have all of the phonies out there. There's quite a number of them. You know, just last week, E. Michael Jones pointed at what's his name? Jordan
Peterson.
Jordan Peterson. You know,
The
and
new
Jordan
chosen one.
Peterson, he even took over Timothy Leary's job at Harvard. You know, and that's that same thing, in my opinion, anyway. So, what did you have one?
Oh, well, I know the audience, like, I think, you know, when you had brought up Jordan Peterson, a lot of people were pretty upset, you know, because I really like a lot of his talks, but yeah, you start to see, I mean, it gets to the point, I mean, as with any person, you hit the wall with them, you know, and there are some things he can't talk about, so.
Yeah, well, which E. Michael Jones exposed. There is this great, and look up E. Michael Jones, exposes Jordan Peterson in a short video that he did recently. It's pretty good stuff.
But just think about he goes contrary to the narrative, right? So the feminine's being pushed, and then here comes this guy from Canada, and he speaks for the men, and he gives us a voice in a very kind of not very alpha way, because I think he's kind of, you know, with his deep contemplation, I think he's still he's not very alpha, but he's the hero for the man. And I'm like, wow, he's getting so much exposure. Now just look at the truth. If a real man was on a television and a news and started speaking that way, they'd cut him off saying, oh, we lost the sound and audio.
Right.
But here he's promoted everywhere. And I'm like, you know, that's what made me suspect. And as soon as Jan found out, he filled in Timothy Leary's position afterwards. I'm like, ding!
Yeah, and I think it kind of, I mean, this sort of ties into inversion too, because it's like, it seems like you can see they'll have like a psyop, like, you know, this super radical feminism or whatever, and they'll push it to its extreme limit, and then just in time, there's like, here's the antidote, you know, here's Jordan Peterson, here's a man to, you know, keep everyone corralled into the narrative that they want. And like someone said in the chat, you know, 66-33.
Well, and Jordan Peterson is constantly promoting psychedelics, just like Tim Leary did out of that same damn department at Harvard. And he was at McGill, where you and Cameron did all of the human experiments. And he's heavily influenced by Aldous Huxley, who ran MK Ultra. I mean, you know, he's connected in there. Also influenced by George Orwell. You know, so this is the same group of people that we've been exposing for years now, and he's right in the center of the same garbage. So, you know, it's what they're doing now is they're using him to promote psychedelics with a masculine twist, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just, you know, he doesn't hit any of the hard truths that are going to empower people. He just counters things, like when you're just mentioning abortion, right? So one of my thoughts of inversion is, wow, the Canaanites used to practice the art of when the firstborn's born, they would sacrifice it, right? That was to their god Baal and Molech. So then you're like, then I start using the trivium, I'm like, wow, that practice. I wonder if that's a historical practice being brought into a more acceptable way to consume it. Because I mean, we're seeing all that stuff on cannibalism and everything. This is all inversion of natural law. All these shows about everything's homosexual. Every single show has a homosexual. Every single show eats. They're starting to talk about cannibalism and all this free sex, and it's everywhere. And so what Jordan Peterson does, he just kind of counters and say, you got to stand up straight. You got to look like a man. You got to provide. It's all the harmless stuff.
And do ayahuasca and mushrooms and DMT, psilocybin.
Discover more of your inner manliness.
And uncommon conspiracies. Thanks for the donation. He says vaccines are a type of inversion, and I agree with that too.
Heck yeah, that's okay. This is the number one reason why we pulled our kids out of public education, right? Is that talk about inversion on the same people who scream for the right to kill their baby, unborn baby, I'll give them that, say that you have to inject chemicals in your body even if you don't want it. And I was like, well, what happened to your meme of it's my body, my choice? So as soon as that, I'm just like, I ain't playing your game. You're gone. They're out.
And that's what the anti-vaxxers should do is pick up that chant, my body, my choice,
Oh, they are. And they're pulling their kids out. And that's why, California is going to have some law that's going to say, we got to protect the homeschoolers.
Yeah. Well, and they, and Trump is trying to block the whole forced vaccination things as well. And we've exposed that a couple of times. So male is an inversion of the female and vice versa. And then what they do for sex changes, they invert the male organ for a sex change. I mean, this, again, it's inversion. It's, constantly with the inversion.
Are we getting glitchy?
What's that?
Are we getting glitchy?
Yeah, a little bit. Let's see what's going on there. Yep, anyway, sure is.
I figured as soon as we brought up Jordan Peterson saying he avoids all these topics, and I start bringing it up, there goes the glitch.
Yep. So we are real glitchy. And there it goes green again. So sorry about the glitch there, folks. For those of you who got one, they didn't like us talking about Jordan Peterson. Apparently,
I'll behave, YouTube. I'll behave.
Yeah. CIA, InQtel, they don't like us exposing all their crap. They need to get over themselves. It's like, done. Stop sending all your stupid trolls, and we know who's running them all. It's so obvious.
The trolls was their big gig, right? They're like, let's create chaos and division, but the truth was winning out. So now they're straight up censoring. I mean, it's undeniable censorship. I'm like, man, in the battle of ideas and truth, you got to let the stupid people in and the crazy opinions. And then we look and analyze it, and then we shoo it out just from pure reason and logic and truth. But now, these people who bought into Snopes finding the truth for them, and now they're going to trust Zuckerberg and Google and YouTube, and because they don't even know who these people are. They're the people that want to control you. They are controlling you. And you are asking them to control the people that speak out against your tribe. It's just insanity.
You want to hit the next one? Or do you have one? All right, yeah, so, another one is the healthcare industry versus sick care. The so-called healthcare allopathic industry is mostly just dispensing drugs and medicine rather than getting to the root cause of disease, such as the low-fat diet, high grains, carbos, sugars, lectins, oxalic acid, phytic acid, stuff like that. And rather than focusing on low inflammation foods and ketosis, they focus on dispensing pills. And then modern churches enslave versus freeing us in logos. A lot of them do anyway. We can't say all, but certainly a lot of them are more geared toward keeping their doors going rather than keeping the members in logos, because when you read the Bible itself, it says two or more gathered in my name is church. So that's it's like that's as far as you really need to go with it. But and then Tartary, they flipped the name Tartary itself into meaning hell, and then it was the most free place. They called them the Slavs, the slaves, and the Hellenistic period, another inversion there. Did you want to hit that one?
Which one were you talking about? Sorry.
Hellenistic period.
No. But I do want to touch on the chat real quick, because someone in the chat says, how does MGTOW tie to the CIA and eugenics? And just from my own personal research and the videos that I've done, I think like a year and a half ago, I did a couple of videos on MGTOW. It means men going their own way. And it was supposed to be the, it's the antidote to the radical feminism.
Right. Well, and it's the male version, and somebody else is asking me, and thanks again, Anthony, for donating. He's 4-1 tonight, so thanks, Anthony, for supporting the whole show almost tonight, or 80% of it. And but it's the inversion of feminism. So, for feminism, men are evil and men bad, family bad. It's all about suppression and kill your family tree rather than having children and family and being able to look back at the end of your life and enjoy what you've created. You just got to have lots of lovers and not invest in your future. And so it's just an inversion. So now it's MGTOW is men saying women are terrible, women are just all out to get men and money and blah blah blah, and we shouldn't build anything real. So again, they invert it.
Go ahead.
So what I find funny about the inversion of feminism is just to show you how men are so much weaker than women when it comes to acting macho. The reason why is that man is so driven by sex that he'll screw a lunatic leftist who's hot, right? But I don't. Most women, if you go in like the Magto men, like caveman, alpha man, we don't need women. I can't imagine any man who still wants
like
to.
Beta male or a homosexual or something. That's not really the best way to approach things.
Yeah, you might not be into sex that much, I guess, because you ain't getting anything. So
and if they do, it's very short-term relationships.
So just 2 quick points on that. So when I started to make videos critical of what I called the MGTOW movement, I was just doing research and like looking where the symbol came from. It's like a rune symbol, and I need to follow up on that because I think there is something like esoteric to the whole thing, and some of my viewers were trying to help me find where this actually came from, and it's kind of occulted, let's just say. So when I start to do videos on it, which, I think there is something to be said about the men's rights movement. It's kind of like 66-33 as far as a lot of men who joined MGTOW, they were like, I've sworn off women because I went through a horrible divorce. I got screwed over in the court system. The family court system, is really terrible to fathers in a lot of ways. So I can see that. And they use that, with 66-33 to just say, just continue to destroy the family. So when I started to do videos critical of what I thought it was a psyop. I didn't really know what I was talking about back then before I had met Jan. A bunch of trolls came in. Like, I was attacked relentlessly. Even to this day, I get, people will call me terrible names on those videos, and I just assume they're trolls. So I think there's something else to the how it started up, and we'll have to follow up on that.
One of the commenters.
Just a second. Thanks to Plup something or other 451 for throwing in $10 for the show tonight. We appreciate the support. What are you going to say?
One of the commenters is really learning this inverse well. And he or she said, oh, well, when feminism was created, the thesis of feminism, the antithesis would be maleism or Magto, right? So,
exactly.
And that proves my point that men are too scared because, even though already the inverse of feminism existed, men know that you got to be sensitive to that woman. This is the power of the woman. So
now another inversion is the word nice. Now that's a really funny one that comes up often. So I'm going to show this on screen here. This is I'm just going to have to cover you over for a second, Mark. Nice, foolish, stupid, senseless, careless, clumsy, weak, poor, needy, simple, stupid, silly, ignorant, unaware, not knowing. And so, you know, this word nice is constantly thrown around by people as it's a good thing to call someone nice. It's like, you know, Jan
nice.
is not nice. Well, that's actually a compliment, you know. So, you know, it's like, so, yeah, I try not to be nice in that sense. You know, I guess I could work on being tempered somewhat. Now, sophistry is an inversion of truth and logos, etc. Oh, prestige. That's a really good one.
Yeah. You know, the movie The Prestige, right? About the magician. That's all inversion. Magic. Man, you want to learn what inversion is and the tricks. Just study magic tricks.
Right.
The esoteric club members know the trick. You don't. So you're in awe.
And so the prestige means deceits, impostures, delusions, juggling, counseling, tricks, magic, illusion, grammar, delusion, illusion, an illusion, a conjuring, trick, a deception, and then blinding or dazzling influence. So when you hear of these, like Harvard, right?
Prestigious.
You know, and when you get that, and thanks Joe Blow for the $20 donation and good stuff. So, you know, Harvard, Yale, you know, when you get that they're tied to the Royal Society and the plagues and, you know, the creation of the witchcraft, and they're intricately tied to the CIA, you get that the prestige is actually just a magic trick, a delusion. So, you know, if you really want a real education, these schools aren't where you want to go. If you want to be a, you know, an agent or whatever and go around lying to people and doing antinomian bullshit, that's where you'd want to go. But the more people learn those tricks, the more and more ineffectual they're going to be, like, you know, like flaccid pricks. Sorry for the analogy.
Do you have Houdini in the brain database?
I do. Let's see. Let me just pull that up. Up. At least I thought I did.
H-O-U.
H-O-U. Oh, there he is. Harry. So, tied to Laurel Canyon and Secret Service, Arthur Conan Doyle, who, of course, big...
Sherlock
goodness.
Holmes.
Yeah. Big agent promoter. And Anthony, again, my goodness, dude. Thanks for the support tonight. Jeez. Really appreciate all the support from Anthony tonight. But, so Houdini, and I haven't done enough investigation into him. And then another one was Mulholland, and of course, Laurel Canyon, Aldous Huxley, all of them all lived off of, all of these things were all directly off of Mulholland going through L.A., and this is where they were running MK Ultra and all of this stuff from. So, let's see. And we have we're about at the end of those examples. So,
well, you know, like the sexual, just to add on that list, the sexual act of creation. That's
right.
A big
well,
one.
yeah. So why don't you hit those, Mark? You want to hit? I think we already hit abortion, right?
Yeah, we did. We hit abortion. You know, which is all, you know, freedom and to have the freedom to do that. But the act of creation is really getting fascinating to me because more and more people are getting C-sections. It's becoming much more clinical.
You mean cesarean sections? I mean cesarean sections?
Yeah. And so, you know, you're really sterilizing a natural process and making it more artful, an artificial thing. And pretty soon I could see a time where everything's going to be done that way. Do you remember I was telling you, Jan,
Wow.
that,
Abel Danger, thank you for the $20 donation. Much appreciated.
you know, they can now clone. They said we can now create life without male and female. But it's just another. They're saying that to make you think that they've inverted nature. They're just taking a clone and doing that, which is still artificial.
Let's see. The entire Bible is inverted by the Satanists. Salem, as Holly and I have been showing extensively for the last couple of months, is a total inversion. We've talked with Robert, who unfortunately couldn't make it tonight, that fathers in the church have been inverted. So, in the Catholic Church, the father is supposed to be a real father invested in the community because the community is his offspring. So the Catholic Church has inverted that, and so we end up with pedophiles and homosexuals that have destroyed the church's reputation and everything, rather than fighting for the community. Now they've become a laughing stock because of this. And what was it last week? The current, I forget Pope's name, is saying they need
Francis.
that they need to bring back marriage in the church. Of course they should. They never, as soon as they banned out marriage in the church, that was when the Catholic Church was inverted. So until that's set straight, the Catholic Church is inverted. And thanks again for the kind comment there, Abel Danger. Frankenstein and the Resurrection is an inversion. So, what they've done, instead of the Christian resurrection coming up through logos and truth and logic and reason, it's Frankenstein, and they're bringing back the dead. They're resurrecting a dead, decaying body, or, creating a monstrosity, a monster, from cobbling something together.
And I think that ties directly in with transhumanism. I mean, you were talking about, it starts off with C-sections, and then they can grow, babies in like a placenta bag. That's like another thing they're promoting now. And then Frankenstein. So, and transhumanism tied in with the singularity. So people are going to want to download their souls or spirits into the greater internet connection, and then we can live forever, of course. So it's all part of this plan to invert humans. That's what we're looking at with transhumanism and AI. The AI revolution that's being forced upon us right now is and free thought. We're moving towards, as people see in the chat, when there's bots and there's trolls, that's the inversion of human consciousness at this point.
I hope we go in this direction now, because you're absolutely right in that inversion is just the opposite. But what Jan and I were talking about, some of the symbols I hope he starts to put up, it's that birth of the middle way.
We're gonna go into that here in just a second. So
sorry,
you're jumping ahead, getting the audience all excited.
Sorry, man.
What we're gonna do is, as soon as somebody donates $500, we're gonna throw those images up, right? So that me and Holly can fund our next trip to Salem. Kidding, folks. Sort of.
No, he's not.
So the rainbow has been inverted by the gay community from Genesis 9:17. One of you want to cover that one?
Well, I think we covered it on the last show. It was the promise of God to never, God.
Okay, did we? Yeah.
Yeah, and so, but on that topic, which is, I love it because people are afraid to talk about it. But let's look at inversion. Let's look at how people, let's say with autism or Down syndrome, or even a homosexual, is now is lifted up as a model, and I think it has value, because all things in nature that were created have value. The issue is, why is it being propped up? Why is that now what we strive for? It used to be the shows and the things that were propped up were families that we strive to be like, but we weren't because we were broken. Now they invert it and take the less, like they said, switching of positions. They show the most degraded family, the most dysfunctional relationships. And instead of us striving for that, we go, I'm good compared to them.
Right. So now getting to the next page and the images. Mark, this one is yours. So why don't I just cover our side of the screen for a minute and you can talk about your breakdown here. Is that all right?
Oh, sure.
All right. So I'm going to do that now. Here we go.
So is this the picture that I have a bunch of handwriting on?
Yes, exactly. With the Star of David.
Okay. So Jan was really big on the number 12. So we kind of, these little things come from the we call it the Ethernet of truth, which the internet was modeled off of after. And we were talking about 12, symbolism of 12, 12, 12. And then I went, hey, wait a minute, the Star of David, the 6. And if you take the hexagram points and flip it in, that's the inversion. So I'm like, that's 12. And then I just started looking at the shape more. And so I was just jotting down some notes here so I could remember when I talked with Jan about it. And so excuse the writing there. But basically, if you look at the triangle pointing upwards, you can see the top, that's the grammar or the truth. That's which we call God, which Jan keeps saying, you guys got to figure it out. When we say God, it's not a deity. That's what they do to control you. We're trying to free you from that control. We're just talking truth. It's logos, it's truth. So you live in truth, you're living in God because that's what is real. Everything else is a fantasy, like your virtual reality or TV shows. Jump into that, but understand what you're doing. So then you have that, you could see on that triangle, it's upright and then it's just inverted. And then through that middle is birth of the middle way. This is the hybrid. This is what's coming next. For a very long time, you would have your thesis, antithesis, right? But alchemy is where you take two, the male and the female, and you make a child, right? In mathematics, 1 + 1 is 2. But in alchemy or God act or creation, the 1 and 1 can make 3. And so the birth of the middle way, if we could put the Freemason thing, it's the same thing. You have the square with the compass coming down. And that's the same thing. It's all sexual images because what is the generative principle? It's creation. It requires male and female. And that's why it's so funny when people are so obsessed with homosexuality. I'm like, I get it. That exists. But homosexuality make themselves extinct because the generative principle requires the masculine and the feminine, the male and the female. I'm not trying to be, divisive. That's just a fact. That is natural law. And that's why since the beginning of time, those who hate that there's written laws that we have to follow, those that hate that there's order, that they don't want to find out and have to obey. They want to corrupt and do everything. So this image was that kind of playing with it. And you'll see that you could flip it on that star. You'll see how the logic flips, the rhetoric flips, the grammar flips. And that was that, going back to that triangle of seeking truth where it's this wide and you don't know, but then it keeps narrowing down. This is also the scientific method before it got hijacked, right?
Right. All right, so I'm going to pull that down. Now we're back up and go on to the next one here. Now, you had gone, okay, so there's one more page here, and you have it broken down with the Trinity inversion. Father, truth, becomes mother, primacy of consciousness, son, living in truth, do as thou wilt. We have somebody in there promoting do what thou wilt and libertarianism, which is when you get this stuff, that's false too. And then Holy Spirit, source truth, becomes mass media, internet, etc.
Yeah, remember we were talking about how man tries to copy nature, whether it's marijuana for cancer treatment, the Marinol, the Holy Spirit, where you have access to it if you have the cojones to walk in truth, then it just starts coming. That they created the internet of truth. That's the false Holy Spirit, right? And then when you have the Father God, which is just truth. So just think all that is real and is existing, and you flip that to the mother, and then it gets to how do you feel. So that's the inverse of the masculine to the feminine. Then you have the Son, who is I'm going to live in truth, in harmony the best I can, that's why Jesus is so powerful. And then you flip it, and now you've got that guy who said, do as thou wilt, versus living in harmony and trying to find truth. Because if I want to live in reality, look, if you want to live in the artificial world, go to the prestigious school, join a sorority and fraternity, do all your stupid rituals and sexual perversions, give them their guarantees, and you're going to get some earthly treasures. But, you know, just be careful, because as you move up, if your conscience isn't in the stinking freezer, it's going to eat at you. And then when you start to do the general principle of creating life and then start thinking about your kids, all of a sudden you wake up to being not the center of the universe. And then you're going to shit your pants, and then you'll go to rehab and they'll reprogram you so you can get back and do the work for them. That's what they do with the stars, right? When they all go to rehab, they're just getting reprogrammed.
All right, so let's hit the next one. Did you want to cover the golden ratio, Fibonacci, or?
Well, you know, that golden ratio, the reason why I brought that up is you and Robert came up with this brilliant thing of weakness to strength. Do you remember that? Like, person alone is the most vulnerable. Then you join to two people, right? And then when you get the two people a little bit stronger, then you get a smaller tribe, and the tribes join to make a nation. Do you remember that, Jan?
Vaguely. Not off the top of my head, sorry.
Oh, well, you, Robert, created this really cool graphic. And then I was like, you know what? I think it's more phi. If you're looking at natural progression, look at that, the golden ratio, the 1 and 1 and 2, and the 2 and 1 is 3, then 3 and 5 is 8. That's really how freedom expands from the vulnerable to the strong, being of one mind in a large community. And it's all done through free will, by the way. This is why you want to be of one mind. And in the family, that's easy because you have a king and a queen, and you have, you know, order, and you have that tradition passed down that gets, I think that there's instinctual memory in the heart. I think there's some things that can't be explained just from the undeveloped soul. There's some things characteristics that come out that have been passed through the blood, which is a whole nother discussion.
All right, let's see. So, you know, this is going to go deep here. So this is a logo that comes from I forget what it's called, in Israel. This is the James's church in Israel, Brother of Jesus, and that's this logo here on this piece of pottery, whatever it was. That's where it was found, and we've seen it elsewhere. But this symbol, in our opinion, is a symbol of inversion, and I call it the symbol of everything because it exposes so much. But it breaks down into the fish, and then the menorah and the triangle that would form the Star of David, and then they bring it together. And so when we get into this whole symbol here, let me just move that in the middle so we're not all covered up, if I can get it going there. So the symbol itself, when you stare at it and take it all in, first what it's showing you is that Christianity pointed downward, or logos, has been inverted. It's pointed downward. And then many suggest that the menorah up on the top is, and you know, so this as right hand path and logos or truth would be at the top, and then that would be the new man born in truth or freedom. And so you know, that would be the right hand path, which is thesis, logos, the word, truth as light, which is John 1, Christians, trivium method, truth worship, logic, truth, honesty, honor, integrity, the masculine, Abba, Father, the new man born into truth, freedom, etc. So, you know, that's, somebody make a comment?
You know,
so did you want to cover something there?
I'd like to jump in if you don't mind.
No? Okay, go ahead.
The menorah, let's remember, that was the symbol of Judaism, right?
Right.
People think the Star of David is the symbol of Judaism. That's a symbol of Zionism.
Right.
And
the menorah has also been equated to the devil's pitchfork as well.
And you could look at the right and the left too, and then the process of lighting them. But if you look at the marriage of the menorah or Judaism with Christianity, which is Pisces, the symbol of the fish, which they would do that secret symbol in the sand, you know, that little arc, and then someone would complete it. The marriage of the two is Zionism. And I know, being raised in a Catholic family practicing the philosophy of Christianity, that I know that Zionism runs rampant in the Christian church, which I always found fascinating because, you know, in the Christian church, non-denominational, the Jews are the chosen people. They're God's chosen people. And thank God, we are told, that he opened it up, you know, to us measly Gentiles, right?
Which is a total inversion in itself.
Yeah, because the truth is available to all. Listen, some people have less
Judaism, and like we talked about with E. Michael Jones last week, a Jew is anyone who denies logos. So logos thesis had to be before antithesis. It's actually Judaism. And then from Judaism, they inverted everything into Judaism, and they put the Old Testament before the New Testament, invert the whole thing again. So it's another inversion. You know,
Yes.
So they're constantly doing these inversions with this stuff.
Inversion crypto, you know.
Yep.
It's a hiding.
I think there's an inversion of Jews, though.
Probably,
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So
With Christians, I think.
right, and when we talk about the menorah, and you know, we're talking about covenants with God, and you brought up Christianity. A lot of, you know, modern Christianity in the United States especially promotes Zionism, and if you think about it, like, they're calling for the end times. Like, those Christians want the revelations. They want the end of the world, you know, because they think that that's how Jesus is going to come back. So in a lot of ways, like, they're coming from it in a way that's promoting violence against Jews and against the state of Israel, because they want the destruction in order to bring about the end of the world. You know, that's what we're talking about. And as Joe Biden said, you know, he calls himself a Zionist. He says you don't have to be a Jew to be a Zionist. And if you just look at how we lobby, the lobbyists, and all the money that we put into that state, it's pretty obvious that, you know, the United States is very firmly Zionist in that way.
And when you go all the way back to the Puritans, you can see why. But, you know, and throughout the New Testament, it warns specifically about accepting those, you know, like Revelation 3:9, you know, those who claim they are Jews and are not. And, you know, the whole section in Revelation 3 is about exposing that inversion. You know, and, you know, they say the New Testament is anti-Semitic because the whole thing is about exposing Jewish sophistry. Now, so I want to get into the next image here, which is left-hand path, and so second antithesis, dark as light, Satanist, sophism, or the trivium inverted, fire worship, which we can see as I'm pulling up the image here. Emotion controls thinking rather than logic. Devil, evil, lies, deception, which can be inverted into the feminine. And that's a whole other issue. We're not going to go in depth into Lilith tonight, but that ties into Lilith.
It's huge.
And so those who want to look more into that can research Lilith. And then the new man is born in lies, or Satanism and slavery. So then we see the symbol is entirely inverted. Logos is at the bottom. And then we see the inversion with the triangle flipping one to the other. And then putting the fire, the false light. It's not the light of truth at the top. It's the light of the menorah. Whereas in Logos, it's the light of truth and the light of reason.
So just to jump in real quick about Israel as well, and with the creation of the state. So that was an inversion as well. So in traditional Judaism, the temple cannot be rebuilt until the Messiah comes back. And when Reform Judaism promotes the fact that the temple and the state of Israel can be made first, and then the Messiah can come back. So it was created as an inversion, and that's what there is still a lot of infighting amongst Jews about, is this cart before the horse? And I think that that's an example of inversion creating that state in 1947.
And then you have another inversion when you realize that Israel was the united 12 families, that going back to the shows with Robert Rowe and I, and then that is the true Israel, this covenant between the 12 families, and then when that rises up again. But what they've done is they've inverted that into this false Israel in Palestine, rather than it being Tartary, which, it spanned likely most of the northern hemisphere. So, let's see. And then, here, let's go. Boy, it keeps shifting over. And then the middle path, Revelation 3, 15, 16. That's your moderates, etc. Fence sitters. And in Revelation 3, 15, 16 calls it vomit. Jesus or God is going to spew you out of your mouth for being a moderate, for trying to appease both sides. You're either a Satanist or you live in truth. Don't be a frickin' moderate.
But Jan, if you're a moderate, people call you nice.
Well, right. Yes, that's true. That's true. So you can be nice if you're a moderate, which means, again, we showed that earlier. Nice meaning, foolish, stupid, etc. So if you want to be nice, you can be senseless.
Or if you don't want to have any enemies, like the Abbott brothers sing this song at the end. It's like, I have no enemies. So I'm singing that with my daughter while we're playing guitar, and I'm like, wait a minute. Only nice people have no enemies. Someone living in truth, the evil people, the pedophiles, the murderers, the liars are not going to like me.
Right.
So,
well, how many friends did Jesus have? 12, and then everybody else hated him, right?
Oh, yeah.
So,
well, they like them except when they feel convicted, right?
So now the middle path is also the middle of the road fallacy. There is no truth or no lie, no good or no bad. And so the moderate is transhumanism, transgender, the LGBT QWERTY community, it's the eunuch, and it's the ultimate slave. So rather than somebody being born in logos or truth or in just lies or deception, what they try to do is they're going to say there is no truth, there is no lie, it's this quantum lie, and they just make a bigger lie, and then we're going to birth you through the center of the lie itself. And so they're literally birthing this false reality out of the center of the Star of David.
Just think of the phrases, the memes they use. It's a new dawn. It's the change, the new man, the new way. It's all this stuff that I was caught in it for a little bit because hippie is kind of a rejection of government institution and its love. But then you find out it's all this Hinduism and Thelema. It's all religion, even though you just jump out of one control grid to another.
So I always think of like tune in, drop out is one thing, just promoted, just checking out of society. And granted, I fully admit to have fallen for the middle path for a long time. This idea, people talk about atheism. Well, you still have theist in that word. And so, and you can create, how can you create something from nothing? So that's metaphysics as well, how something can simultaneously exist and not exist at the same time, and then that promotes moral relativism. So I know it's hard for people to try to grasp, like thinking that if you just check out, like then it's fine, and like you said, you'll have no enemies, everything will be fine. Well, as soon as you start to speak in truth, even a tiny bit, you're gonna have haters.
Oh yeah. Well, and then it's what is this? 2 John 1, 4 through 6, and that's where this comes from. If you continue in my word or truth, then ye are my disciples indeed, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. So it's following logos or the truth that keeps us free to begin with. So if you are not interested in logos or truth, you're not interested in freedom.
Well, it's your definition of freedom that's the key, though, because people think freedom is like, I'm just so horny, I want to have sex with that monkey, or I I want to do whatever I want. Who are you to tell me, and these consequences? And then I get disease, and I'm like,
Do what thou wilt is the whole in the law.
yeah, the whole in the law. That was the funny one we came up with. But the freedom is this. If you want to live in reality, it'll set you free because you're just learning rules. You're learning, rocks in the middle of the desert and sun. If you put your barefoot on it, you're going to burn, right?
If you don't take water to the desert, you're going to freaking die.
Yeah.
If you jump off a cliff, you're going to fall.
Yeah. If you treat someone with total disrespect, they're going to either smack you or be disrespectful to you.
And what people don't get is that and especially with the New Testament, the laws of that are laid out there it's natural law, the laws of nature. So if you don't follow these things, then your life is screwed. And if if you're constantly putting things in your body that are not good for you, you're going to be sick, you're not going to perform well, et cetera, et cetera. So, if you're overweight or any of these things, it's your body telling you you're not living in truth. And then you have this inversion going on in society where they want us to accept that is okay now to be obese, rather than recognizing that, hey, well, this is something that I'm lying to myself about, and it's actually not good for me.
Yeah. You know what? Being obese is I feel bad for my obese friends that I love. My mother who passed away, Carrie, it's such a public sin. I mean, you're basically announcing to the world you're a glutton and an addict, and you can't live in truth because it's apparent. But the inversion of that is, I was born big boned. Fat is beautiful. People used to love unhealthy women, and go to Samoa. Yeah, I get it. There could be programming in their culture to lift that up. But the reality is that your organs are stressed, you're inflamed, you're breathing like trying to get air walking upstairs. It's just the truth. So, man, I get it. I love you because I got some sins in my life that I haven't corrected that aren't so public, thank God. But for me to say to you, continue what you're doing, it's working, is a lie. And if I love you, I'm going to speak truth to you. But then that's when you lose friends and, people get mad and they're saying, you're so judgmental. Shoot, listen, I was 35, 40 pounds heavier this before I can only take so much.
Every time I'd go over to your place, I'd hound you about eating wheat and stuff.
And my wife wanted to slap him because, I say, I thought you were gluten-free. So even in our journey, it takes time, right? It's not like, bam. But once we did it and you live it, you realize, wow, that addiction. And then when you have humble enough, we talk about this a lot, Jan, when you humble yourself, you start to really then grow. Because you have to go, well, shoot, it's obvious. I'm just blind to it, and everybody's afraid to tell me the truth because they want to be nice. Except my wife, but my wife will correct me, but I'm like, oh, she's a woman. She doesn't get it, So for many years, I just wasn't ready to handle the truth. But once you are and you change it, you realize I was addicted, right? It's an addiction. It's an addiction to evil.
And it's got gluteomorphine in it, so wheat does. So it is actually addictive like heroin. And when you get to about the 2-month mark, you go through withdrawals like you're coming off of this stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like this
clarity.
Fog clears, right?
Yeah. So I asked my children in my classroom. My 30 kids. We talk about addiction and having power over yourself. With those trivium cards you get. We're always talking trivium, and I go, so who's addicted to TV? No one raises their hand. So I go, shut it off for 1 week. 1 week. No one could do it. The only kids that are able to do it, they don't have TV already. But I said, well, then at least live in truth and say, wow, Mr. Warhol, I tried, and I am addicted. And that should tell you right there that you're living in an inversion.
Now, Mark, do you want to read some of the last quotes off the last page we have highlighted there, and we'll wrap it up?
Sure.
The last 2 pages there.
Are we talking about like the truth shall set you free?
Right. Well, I think I just read the truth shall set you free, so everything below that.
Okay, so... well, the children of the devil. I mean, do you want me to read that one?
Sure, why not?
Okay, so let's just think of this. We just talked about the weapon of about taking truth and personifying it onto a deity, creating a deity. So you could think the same thing with the devil. It's just the inversion or the rebellion to that natural law, the truth that we talk about, which we say is God, but everybody gets confused when we say that. So it says this, it was 2 John 1:42. Jesus said unto them, if God were your father, ye would love me. So that just means that if you're living in truth, and that was your purpose, is live in truth, you would follow me. For I proceeded forth and came from God. Neither came I of myself, but he sent me. Why do you not understand my speech? Even because ye cannot hear my word? Ye are of your father the devil, and the lust of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him, the antithesis of truth. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar, and the father of it. And because I tell you the truth, ye believe me not. Which of you convince of me of sin? And if I say the truth, why do ye not believe me? He that is of God heareth God's words. Ye therefore hear them not, because you are not of God. So it's very simple. It's that saying, for those who have ears to hear will hear.
Right.
And that goes back to, are you seeking truth, or are you seeking confirmation for your tribe and your group?
And then it's like the next passage, John 8:31 through 41. I'm just going to read a little bit there. I'll show it on the screen. I rejoice greatly that I have found of thy children walking in truth, as we have received a commandment from thy Father. So it's just about truth. I mean, when you get it, the whole thing is about truth over and over. And the New Testament actually repeats it from like who knows how many hundreds of different directions to get you to see that it's about truth and living and walking in truth. And it's, and once you get it and you see it, it's like, aha. But what they've done is they've inverted it into this deity worship so that people don't get it's about truth. Like, what is right? Why do we call it right or righteous? What's correct? What's wrong? What's left? Right-hand path, left-hand path. So that comes right out of these ideas. And, so when we get it, it's just about living in truth, and you use the trivium to find truth. And these books help us to learn what truth is so that we can walk and live in consistency with natural law, AKA, the laws of Moses or the laws of God. If you want to get tripped up in that, it's just the laws of nature. If you jump up, you're going to fall down, period. Mm-hmm. So, that's about all I had to add. Did you want to add anything else, Mark?
Well, I used to think calling someone left or right was just a political term. No, when you say someone's right, that means there's a confirmation of truth. And when we looked back into the actual paths, they always said the left, you're to my left. When you look at Baphomet, these esoteric Satan worshipers or the inverters, the right hand's up, right? And the left hand's down. Right and left has been used since the beginning of words and consciousness. The left-hand path means keeping secrets. It means separation. It means not being in harmony. A right-hand path is living and walking in truth and empowering more to do it. It isn't about leverage. It isn't about tricking you and flipping it so I know the magician's trick and I have awe off of you and I can make you wonder. It's about we're basically the magicians. They hate us.
Right.
We're telling the magician's trick.
Right.
That's really simple. And the Bible.
And by the way, it's not a flattering title if you look this stuff up and research it and think about it yourself. That's also an inversion, those who call it a flattering title.
Oh, yeah.
What did you want to add? Nothing?
No.
Oh. So, did you have anything, or are we about ready to wrap it up here?
No, we're pretty good with this. Just look, if you look at life and just keep flipping things that they tell you, especially the things that come from our gatekeepers, right? From education, from music. Remember how motion plays in that one. Hans talks about that a lot. From politics to sports, just listen to what they say, health, and then start flipping it. looking at the reverse and researching it, you will be so surprised what you find. And you're going to go, oh my gosh.
And if you memorize the other fallacies too, you can see those. But probably the biggest one that they use is this Kabbalistic inversion fallacy. It took us 3.5 hours to expose it. And thank you, Adam and Anthony again. Anthony, I think, donated like $70 or $80 tonight. So thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, everyone who supported. I don't remember everybody's name in there. Able Danger, everybody who supported the show tonight. Thank you so much. Thanks, Holly. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for the audience participation. And that's a wrap. Did you want to say goodbye?
Bye.
Hey, Holly and Jan, can't wait to see the stuff that you're discovering. And I mean, I think that's going to be another huge explosion into a whole nother area.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk some more about antinomianism pretty soon.
Great. All right. Good night, everyone. Thanks for
joining. Good night,
joining.
everyone.
See you soon.